Saturday morning cartoons were awesome. From the 1960s through the 1990s, we kicked off each weekend in a frenzy of animation that is unmatched today.
But were these shows actually any good? Join us as we dig into the history of your favorite and not so favorite Saturday morning cartoons, look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of each one, and determine if our nostalgia matches the reality when it comes to these tunes.
So stay in your PJs, grab a bowl of cereal, and settle in. I'm John.
And I'm Robert.
And this is Toon Talk.
So John.
Yeah.
If you're creating a cartoon about mystery-solving teenagers, how many ascots would you include in the cast?
Well, you have to have Freds, and you have to have... Yeah, you need at least one, maybe two.
Well, and clearly Hanna-Barbera was a big fan because they ended up going from 1 to 2 the next time around. So.
Well, I think, wasn't it part of how they, doing Scooby-Doo, invented that, or came up with that procedure of only reanimating the part that was moving, so they needed a line between the torso and the head, so they only had to redraw the head.
For Scooby-Doo, that worked with Josie and the Pussycats. When you watched it, that doesn't make any sense. I think they just liked having that pop of color. Well, yeah, Josie and the Pussycats is an interesting little slice of Hanna-Barbera history here.
Yeah, and I had never seen it. You know, when we decided to do this one, I had never seen it. I knew what it was, but I never watched it, so I came into this completely blind.
Yeah, I remember seeing it when I was a kid, so in the 80s, so I didn't watch this live. I wasn't alive when it first debuted, but it was 1980s on the USA Cartoon Network.
Is where you discovered it.
Yeah, Cartoon Express is when I first saw it.
I remember that, yeah.
So they had played some of those, and that's where I first was familiar with it. Having gone back and watched it again, it's a little different than I remember it. But we can get into that.
Yeah, it was vaguely familiar to me, even though I didn't see it.
Oh, it's very familiar.
Yeah.
Especially after having watched Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?
Yeah.
But, yeah. So.
And the Archies.
And the Archies, yes. Yeah, it definitely...
Well, I texted you, I'm like,
heavily.
Is this supposed to be a spin-off of the Archies or a rip-off of Scooby-Doo? I'm confused.
Yes.
The answer is yes.
Yes, it is. I mean, it all comes back to 1969 when Hanna-Barbera had a bona fide smash hit with Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And they were looking to keep that momentum going. So what they would opt to do is the option that they would then do ad nauseum over the next decade is, well, let's find a mystery-solving group of kids with an animal sidekick and let hilarity ensue.
Right. Here's the formula.
So we're just going to clone Scooby-Doo over and over and over and see what happens. In order to move quickly at this point, they thought, well, let's look for a established property, something that people know. We can just kind of plug it into the formula and let's go with it. And what better place to do that than to look at the other hit show of that time, the previous year, 1968, which is the Archie show.
Right.
And it's like, well,
based on a comic.
Yes. So they reached out to Archie Comics looking for something. And what they found was Josie McCoy. So Josie McCoy first appeared in Archie Comics in this episode of Archie Pals and Gals, number 23 in 1963. And that same year, then they made a series called She's Josie. That featured this Josie, who's this very sweet-natured girl, her blonde best friend Melody, who's kind of a ditzy.
She's ditzy.
Yeah. And then a bookwormish brunette friend named Pepper. So 3 white girls kind of in the Archie universe. They didn't necessarily cross over with Archie.
Yeah.
They were just kind of their own thing. The initial series also featured Josie and Pepper's boyfriends. There's a guy named Albert and then somebody named Sock.
Sock.
S-O-C-K.
S-O-C-K.
Yeah. And then Albert's rival, Alexander Cabot III, and his twin sister, Alexandra, also debuted.
Yeah. What should we name the twins? How about Alexandria and Alexander?
Alex and Alex. That won't be confusing at all.
It won't confuse anyone.
That way the parents don't have to come up with more than one name.
That's right.
It can't
just start yelling at them, Alex!
Who, me? Yes, I don't know.
Why don't you get over here?
Kid. So throughout her comic experiences, Josie's surname actually kept changing. So initially it was Josie McCoy. And then you'd see Josie Jones, Josie James. No real reason as to why. It just... Yeah, whoever was writing it, just like, Josie Jones. There you go.
What's that Josie chick's name? Okay,
I don't know. Whatever.
Go with Jones.
But ultimately, McCoy was the kind of the fallback. Ultimately, was the real name. It would just, if you couldn't remember, whatever.
Yeah.
With issue number 17 of She's Josie, She's Josie was renamed to just Josie. So it was just about her. And in December 69, the series was renamed to Josie and the Pussycats, with issue number 45. And it was there in that issue that Josie and Melody came up with the idea of starting a band called the Pussycats. So we have our origin, where Hanna-Barbera would pull their information. But so originally Alexandra was the bassist. And as they would pull into the cartoon, Alexandra kept insisting they change the name of the group to Alexandra's Cool Time Cats.
Yes.
So she was then replaced by a new girl in school named Valerie Smith, and then named Valerie Brown later on. So while Josie became the lead singer and guitarist, Valerie was portrayed as the intelligent, the kind of like the smart person of the group.
She was logic.
And she just was a tambourine player, which, is 60s, 70s. And then Melody Jones was the drummer. So again, Melody Jones, I think her name changed a couple times too, but whatever. They didn't care, so whatever. Why should we?
Yeah, I just went with the first name.
So the uniforms had leopard prints, and they were complemented by these ear cat headbands that the creator his wife had found some at a party one time. He's like, oh yeah, let's do that, and then we'll give them these long tails attached to their costumes. And they decided that Alexander should be their manager for some reason, even though he's a rival to Josie's boyfriend. It's comic book logic. But so the series in 1970 was reimagined. So Albert, Sock, and Pepper were all booted. There's some reasoning behind it, but we'll get into that. And then thereafter, the series emphasized the Pussycats traveling across the country and the world, performing gigs with basically a roadie named Alan M. Mayberry. And then Alexander, the manager, and then Alexandra was traveling with them for some reason.
Okay.
We'll get into that too.
Yeah.
So these changes, they were directly tied to the development of the cartoon, because the later iteration, that's later iteration that Hanna-Barbera would bring to the small screen. The original concept for Scooby-Doo was actually, they were supposed to be banned. Mysteries 5.
Right.
And then they would stumble across these mysteries in between gigs and then solve them. So they just basically that's ready-made. This is a band. They travel around. Let's slap a mystery in between the other gigs. And so they went with it. They reached out to Archie Comics, and they coordinated a new series. So they didn't acquire the rights to Josie. They just went into a partnership with Archie Comics.
Right.
Like Scooby-Doo, each episode kind of has its own formula. So the band, on their way to either a recording session or to a gig somewhere, anywhere in the world.
Right. They were traveling. They were on a world tour.
They're globetrotters.
Yeah.
Alexander, for as much of an idiot as he booked them everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
Yeah. They would stumble across some villainous plot, and they would generally something for world domination, because if you're going to make a villainous plot, you may as well take over the world.
Well, it was funny that sometimes they were actively involved in the plot. They didn't just stumble across this and go, whoa, what's going on here? We got to figure this out. Like somehow they came into possession of something that the bad guy needed. Yeah. So then they were the bad guy's target, and they had to get themselves out of trouble and then solve the mystery. It wasn't like, oh, we just need to figure out what's going on here. It's like they had skin in the game.
Yeah. By happen chance, they would be involved one way or another, whether, and
sometimes not know it.
Yeah. And so ultimately, they would thwart the bad guy's plan, and then they'd move on to their musical destination, and everybody be happy again, except for Alexandra, who was always miserable.
Was never happy. No.
And each episode also included a song, a new song that would be played over the chase sequence, like you saw at the second season of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Yeah. But these are all unique, and these are specifically Josie and the Pussycat songs.
Band.
And they were released as an album to go along with the show. At one point in development, a live action version of the band was planned to be at the end. So you'd see the cartoon, it would end a couple minutes earlier, and you would see this live segment of the Josie and the Pussycats, actresses. Sure. But
sort of like the Monkees TV show, they always actually played a song.
But the real voices behind the cartoon characters playing, singing the song and performing. Okay. That was scrapped fairly quickly, but it played a significant role. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into that in a little bit, because there's some more into that than just...
There's more. But wait, there's more.
So debuting on September 12th, 1970, Josie and the Pussycats ran through January 2nd, 1971, lasting 16 episodes with a a second series, Josie and the Pussycats in Outer Space, replacing it the following year for a 1-year run of its own before it was canceled. So going around the globe wasn't enough. Let's just go space. Around the...
And we didn't watch the space series. We just watched the first 16 episodes.
No, because we don't need to swim going through the solar verse.
Yeah, thanks for that.
The Josie Gang would be back on the small screen for a guest appearance on the new Scooby-Doo movies in 1973. And in there, they would team up with their...
Yeah, they did a crossover episode.
Yeah, they would team up with the Scooby Gang in the efforts to save a haunted riverboat.
Well, and why not?
Yeah, well, and of course, then the new Scooby-Doo movies were actually 50 minutes. They were longer episodes, like 40 minutes long. So they were like a double episode. So you had...
So what I found was interesting...
all the ascots you could imagine.
There were 3. They went from 1 to 2 and now 3. Yeah. And 2 characters who are very similar.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that, too, when I talk about the character voices.
Yes.
Which I can't imagine how confusing that must have been.
Yeah.
I need to go up and watch that episode, actually.
Well, you had a couple...
I'm sure you've seen it.
You had a couple characters. Yeah, I've seen them multiple times, actually. Yeah. But you have multiple characters who are very similar. Because Fred and Alan are... Alan's just like a swole version of Fred. And
exactly. He's like Fred on... He's like the Bobby Bonds Fred. Yeah. He's just like huge compared to Fred.
He's the Fred who spends all his time in the gym.
Yeah, exactly.
and then Alexander and Shaggy are basically the same
very
character.
Similar, yeah.
So after that, they were ended up on the original series reran on NBC's Saturday morning lineup from 1975 and 76 season, and then there was early production in the Laugh Olympics to include Sebastian, Alexandra, and Melody as part of the Hanna-Barbera characters on the Scooby-Dooby team, but that was early on, and they realized legally they weren't able to use
Couldn't
them.
do it.
Yeah, Archie was not going to let him do it.
Yeah.
And so that was the end of that. The original series would then pop up again in the 80s, as I mentioned earlier, where I saw it was the USA Network, and then again in the 90s in the Cartoon Network, and now it's available streaming through Boomerang, and then it's readily available on DVD as well.
Right. And there was a live-action movie created.
There was in 1995. It bombed.
I didn't see it.
The less said about that, probably the better.
Okay. We don't want to tarnish the history of... Yeah.
Yeah, it did not
do well.
No, it did not. But I think one of the things that really stand out to this is, I mean, you've got a bigger cast than you did in Scooby-Doo. You have more characters, so that means more voice work to be done.
Right. Yeah. And the cast was, they had an actual voice for the character, the voice actor for the character, and then they had a singing voice as well. And Josie, as the front woman of the band, was voiced by Janet Waldo. The only interesting thing I could find about Janet Waldo is she's the cousin of Ralph Waldo Emerson, the poet. So there's that. And she was also, I guess I lied, that's not the most interesting thing I found about her. The most interesting thing I found about her is she was also Judy Jetson. Yes. And Judy Jetson was awesome. That's an icon in Saturday morning cartoons.
And once you know that, you immediately hear the voice.
Exactly, yeah. When I started looking at the credits about halfway through the series, I'm like, that's why that sounds familiar. It's Judy Jetson. But she was great, The singing voice was Kathy Douglas for Josie. Valerie was the bass player, and she always seemed to be like the voice of logic and reason and kind of the level-headed person in the group. She was voiced by Barbara Perriott, and the singer, this was the cool part, the singer of Valerie's part was Patricia Holloway. Patricia Holloway co-wrote the song You Make Me So Very Happy with her sister. Her sister was a Motown recording artist named Brenda Holloway. But the song became popular with Blood, Sweat, and Tears. They took it up to number 2. Yeah. I mean, that's a iconic 60s and 70s song. Everyone knows that song. I'm not going to sing it, but everyone knows it. The other interesting thing about Valerie that I learned is she was the first black character who appeared regularly on Saturday morning cartoons. She was the first black female character that was in every episode.
Correct.
She was a full-time member of the cast, which I thought that was really cool. And they did her really well. I mean, there was no stereotype to Valerie. She was part of the group. There was no well, we just need this token character. It was nothing like that. I thought they did it really, really well. So I really liked that about Valerie.
And you mentioned she was the intelligent one, so she was kind of critical in most of the
capers.
These capers and like thwarting the villains. She was a linchpin in actually them succeeding and getting out of the whatever.
Well, because I found Josie a lot of times was oblivious to the real danger they were in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she was involved. She wanted to get out of it, but she was really oblivious to how much trouble they were really in. Mm-hmm. Melody's just a ditz. Mm-hmm. So Valerie was kind of holding it together.
Yeah. Well, and it was funny because Melody would actually bumble into, just because she'd be goofy and silly, and then she'd solve problems just by like happenstance.
Right. It's like the villain didn't take her seriously, and she would just accidentally fix things. because Melody was, the stereotypical ditzy blonde. The voice was Jackie Joseph. Jackie Joseph was a television actress. Also did some movies in the 80s. She had a supporting role in Gremlins, in Small Soldiers, and she played in the 1960 version of Little Shop of Horrors. She was Audrey.
Oh.
She was Audrey in Little Shop of Horrors.
Well, I could see that with her voice.
Yeah, with her voice. It makes perfect sense. Did some Hogan Heroes episode, and she was in 2 of the 18 Police Academy movies. I don't know which ones, but she was in there. And what I found out about the singing voice of Melody, the singing voice in the credits is listed as Sherry Moore, also known as Cheryl Jean Stoppelmore, which was her full name, also known as my favorite Charlie's Angel, Cheryl Ladd. So this was Cheryl Ladd. Cheryl Ladd played Chris Monroe, replaced Farrah Fawcett's character in season 2 of Charlie's Angels. So the singing voice was one of Charlie's Angels, Cheryl Ladd, which I thought was great, because I didn't hear it when I was watching it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. That's because she's singing, you don't really pick it up.
Right.
And then I looked in the credits, I'm like, who's Sherry Moore? So I had to do a little more digging. I'm like, oh my gosh, Cheryl Ladd. I had no idea she could sing. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, she kind of reinvented herself otherwise.
Right after that, for sure. So then we have the non-singing members of the group, the support people in the group. We have Alan, who's the band's roadie, and he looks exactly like Fred from Scooby-Doo. I mean, he's got blonde hair, the white sweater, the ascot that we've been talking about, the blue pants, and he's almost the same character. Like, he's kind of stoic. Mm-hmm. He's burly. He's a big guy.
Yeah, he's the muscled-up version of Fred. But
exactly. Yeah. And I couldn't get past it. I'm like, is this guy, is that Fred? And why are they calling him Alan? I just don't understand it. He was voiced by Jerry Dexter. Jerry Dexter played a lot of teen boy characters for Hanna-Barbera. Mm-hmm. I mean, the list is too long, but they were all supporting roles.
Sure. Mostly
known as Aqualad from the Superman and Aquaman hour.
Yeah.
TV, he was in Gomer Pyle, USMC as Corporal Johnson. But the Aqualad is probably what he's known most for. And again, no singing voice for Alan. He didn't sing. Alexander, the band's manager, and this is a hill I will die on, he was drawn and acted exactly like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, except for he wore sunglasses, and he was a little smarter than Shaggy, didn't talk to a dog.
No goatee.
But it was Shaggy. Because he was voiced by Casey Kasem. Mm-hmm. And Casey Kasem, obviously, we all know is the voice of Shaggy. So now you've got this character drawn like Shaggy, kind of acts like Shaggy, and he sounds like Shaggy too. Even the zoinks and all that stuff. And I couldn't get past it. And that's when I texted you. I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah, and he's like Shaggy. He's a scaredy cat.
Yeah. And they call him Chicken.
Yeah.
Chicken Brother is what his sister calls him. Chicken Brother. Yeah, and he's always frightened, and he just wants to get out of there. He doesn't care about solving anything. I just want to go. His sister. Let's talk about his sister.
Do we have to?
Yeah, we have to. Alexandria, his twin sister. She was voiced by... I'll do the serious stuff first, and then we'll talk about the character. She was voiced by Sherry Alberoni, who got her start as a Mouseketeer on the Mickey Mouse Club, because she could tap dance and play a saxophone at the same time.
Wow.
Chipping her teeth in the process.
Yeah.
But her stage name, her agent made her change her stage name to Sherry Allen because she thought Alberoni was too ethnic and she might not get cast in the Mickey Mouse Club. No. So she shortened her name to Sherry Allen. So yeah, she was on the Mickey Mouse. She was a Musketeer in the Mickey Mouse Club, which was really cool. So she's Alexander's twin sister, and she has no role with the band whatsoever. No. She's not the manager. She doesn't handle the merch. She doesn't have the travel around. She's zero.
She has no reason to be there.
None.
Other than she's
the manager's little sister or twin sister,
and her family's rich, so she just gets to travel.
Just gets to go with them.
Yeah,
yeah, and she's bitter and jealous. Mm-hmm. She wants Alan, and anytime Alan's near Josie, she's trying to break him up. And figures Josie would sit next to Alan, wherever they are, they're on the airplane or the boat or whatever. She's always trying to separate them, and then she's always insulting the rest of them too. Just calling them dumb, and you don't get this, and
like the band's terrible.
The band sucks. It'd be better if it was my band.
Exactly, Alexander's Cool Time Cats.
Yes, exactly. But I'll give her credit here. She was a fighter. When things went to the mat, she stood up for the band, and she was willing to fight, and she was willing to defend the whole band. And it's because she was so mean. So she had a white streak in her hair.
Yeah, she looked like a skunk.
Yeah, so the white streak in her hair is a holdover from the comics. She was drawn that way in the comic because she had limited paranormal or supernatural powers in the comic, and the white streak was the mark of the witch. Oh. And when I read that, I'm like, well, if the wig fits. Because she was just mean.
Yeah.
She was worse than that clown in Archie's.
Reggie.
Yeah. Yeah, she was way worse than him. And she was directly mean to them.
I don't know what it is about these cartoons that we keep watching. I mean, we just had it with Dungeons and Dragons too. There's always one character that you just look at him like, why would they even hang out with this kid?
Yeah.
I mean,
did they sit around, the writers sit around and go, we need a character that everyone's going to hate.
No redeeming qualities whatsoever.
No, let's put him in.
It's Reggie Mantle. That's Eric from Dungeons and Dragons. It's Alexandria here. I mean, it's just...
He's in.
And like, I realize they need to have some kind of conflict, but isn't the conflict coming from the fact that they're
in trouble?
Yeah, that there's
I'd
some villain trying to destroy the world.
Yeah, if it was comic relief, but it's not. She's just flat out mean.
Yeah,
to them.
She's half the time she's molesting Alan, and it's
it's kind of creepy.
He's clearly not having it.
No, he's not into it at all. But he can't do anything because the boss, the manager, it's his sister.
Yeah,
so they're stuck. Yeah, I just didn't get it. I grew to hate her.
Yeah, I did not like, and of course then there's always some kind of like pseudo comeuppance. She's like,
sure,
she's like, oh well, I'm gonna mess with their recording, and then she like trips over and like electrocutes herself, and then it's like, oh, that's funny. Yeah. Like, no, she really does not add
nothing.
They could have taken that character out altogether, and it probably would have made it better.
Yeah,
you don't need that internal conflict.
But then who would the cat have belonged to? Because Sebastian the cat belonged to Alexandria, right? And any guesses?
They could have given that to Alexander.
They could have,
The cat didn't, whatever, it wasn't necessarily loyal. I mean, it basically just looked like her hair is all it was.
It did, exactly.
It's a black and white cat with her black and white hair.
The cat did help in a couple of situations.
Actually, that's what we'll talk about a little bit. One of the most ridiculous aspects of the show.
So a Hanna-Barbera cartoon in the early 70s, and you've got a cat. Who do you get to voice the cat?
Well, it's you're too close to Scooby-Doo yet. You don't have the Frank Welker established as the voice for every animal that ever walked the earth, so it's got to be Don Messick.
Yeah, it's Don Messick. It just has to be. By the process of eliminating one other person, you come to Don Messick, and we all love Don Messick. I mean, it was great. Not a lot of sounds, pretty much the same sound every time, but it was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I thought the voice
it was a good cast.
Really well done.
I did too, and I thought the writing was good too, outside of Alexandria's part, which I don't understand, but the writing was good. The dialogues were good, and even the stories I thought were good. The villains were great. I mean, the villains were hardcore villains.
Yeah.
They were out for world domination.
Yeah, and they were trying to kill them.
Yeah, they weren't just like trying to scare people away from the amusement park. They were like, we're going to put you in the dungeon.
Yeah, these aren't real estate gigs. They're trying to they're trying to wipe people out and take over things. But I did want to talk a little bit about, you'd mentioned the singing voices, and the singing voice component is actually what created the character of Valerie unintentionally.
Yeah.
So there's almost 2 tracks going when they were doing the casting and like the animation and the character, the voice acting was one track, and then of course they decided they're going to do singing. They're going to actually do live action singing, as I mentioned earlier.
Let's get some legitimate singers.
Exactly. So you had and knowing that music was going to be to match the Archie show, they wanted to have a new song every single time. So they had a company called La Productions was actually handling all the casting of the singing voices, and they found obviously Doherty and Cheryl Ladd, and then Patrice Holloway. They found her as well, and they said, "Hey, these are three of the best," and they gave them to Hanna-Barbera, and Hanna-Barbera looked at it and like, you know what, these guys are amazing.
Yeah.
The problem was La La Productions did not know is that the 3 characters of Josie and the Pussycats are all white girls,
right?
And as we talked about, Holloway was not.
Right.
She's a black woman. And so there's a lot of, Hanna-Barbera asked, so Danny Jansen is the guy who kind of cast everybody and took it to them and said, these are our people. And Hanna-Barbera's like, well, you're right, they're amazing, but we've already started the animation on this. Yeah. And so it's not because she was black, it's because they're like, we could change that character. Unfortunately, we've already started drawing it. We've done some of the voice acting already on. I mean, it's between the time and the production costs, and then worst of all, trying to get approvals on all this.
Sure,
I don't think we can do this. And so he said, "Okay, that's great. I am not going to go back and tell her that she's not up for this gig simply because you guys aren't going to change the cartoon. So, hey, next time you have a job you need, hey, reach out to me, but I'm not going to be involved with this project." And so Jansen walked away. Ooh. And what is amazing is that Hanna-Barbera blinked. Yeah. And they're like, you know what? He's probably onto something. I mean, they did like her voice to the point that they went back to Archie Comics and said, look, we have this voice. We actually think we should change the character. Yeah. And Archie Comics said yes.
Yeah, so she was awesome.
Because at the same time as all this is happening, suddenly Pepper disappears from the Josie and the Pussycats comic book, and Valerie Brown shows up.
Really?
Yeah. And
so they changed the comic book too.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And that's kind of what snowballed back and ended up back in the cartoon. Yeah. So so the cartoon, just the trying to find a singing voice of a cartoon led to actually the changing. Comic.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And it's actually totally for the better because Holloway's voice, her vocals are amazing.
Oh yeah.
I mean the songs and
and
we can go on to the music right now.
Sure, because the music is unbelievable.
Yeah, the music is fantastic.
It's legit great music.
Yeah, and it's a major component of this because it's it's a new song and it's not like the Archie show where they like, here's a new song and a new dance.
Oh yeah,
like,
no.
Yeah,
it wasn't forced.
Yeah, and you had 2 decent songs. You had Sugar Sugar, and I can't even remember what the other one was.
Right,
it's like, okay, that's not bad.
Yeah,
and then you had a whole bunch of just like, I don't ever need to hear that song again in my
crap.
life. Yeah, it was just awful. In this case, Josie's voice as Doherty as the voice, and she didn't feel like her vocals were strong enough to be the lead. Yeah. She thought she was better served as harmony with the other 2 because the other 2 were much better than her. Mm-hmm. And so she just kind of ceded the spotlight and let them go with it. And so for half the songs, Holloway's the lead singer, and the other half, Ladd's the lead singer. Right. And there's a couple where they each like take a verse. That's kind of amazing. Or somebody's like, "Well, you're Josie of Josie and the Pussycats,
but you're not the lead singer.
Yeah, you're not going to be singing.
Yeah,
or you're just going to be doing the backing vocals." And
right.
It's really interesting the way it all worked out. So the title song is its own adventure because I don't know if you came across this, but it was actually originally background music from just various Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
I didn't recognize that.
Well, and I didn't recognize it either. Eventually, I went and heard it. So it started as that incidental music you hear as the action's going on. Like it started off in the Jetsons.
When Alan comes scooting across the
so you'd see it like, you kind of hear it in all those cards. Like Scooby-Doo, you hear the same, and even in these cards, you hear that same background music all the time. But they had taken this repetitive song that they'd used before, slap lyrics on it for Josie and the Pussycats, and it became their lead song.
Oh, cool.
That was the title sequence, was the song that had just been background music otherwise.
Wow.
And then for the new songs that they created through La La Productions, there's a definite uptick from what we saw, as we mentioned, from Archie, but if nothing else, that song Voodoo, and I texted you about this.
You did. You sent
Voodoo
me a link to
is Voodoo is a fantastic song in episode 2. I mean, yeah, that song, as the kids say, that song slaps.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, I think that it doesn't even feel like of its time. It just feels like it's just like a little like that could fit in anywhere, and it's just a really good song.
It's like if they put that in an episode of Stranger Things, it's going to go to number 1.
Yeah,
because people are going to like they discovered Kate Bush all of a sudden.
Yeah,
it's going to be huge.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
and I will die on that hill.
It's a great song.
I would put that in if I could find it. I could put it if it was available on Spotify. It would be on like every playlist I have.
Yeah. Good luck. It's on. You can find it on YouTube.
Yeah, on YouTube. Unfortunately, the other songs that for the most part are really good.
Yeah,
and, I mean, very much of their time, but they're good tracks. Like Stop, Look, and Listen, Every Beat of My Heart. I mean, they're good tracks.
Very good. Yeah.
And like if you slip them into rotation on like an oldies radio station, they would sound just as good, if not better, than some of the stuff that you already hear.
Nobody's going to go,
oh,
that's a stupid, cartoon song. It's
not. No, there was some really good stuff.
Yeah, I compare the music in this to the Monkees, where the music had a life of its own outside of the show,
Yeah.
And they did release an album. I don't know how well it did, but
it was there.
Yeah, I enjoyed the music.
I couldn't find really information about where it like charting or anything, so it didn't really do much, but it happened.
Right.
But
it was good.
Undeservedly, I thought it could have gotten more attention. But and I do have to add that the existence alone of Voodoo directly impacts my final score of the show.
Oh, perfect. Very good. So do you want to talk about episodes? Yeah. Here, I had a couple of ones that I really enjoyed and one that I really hated. Episode 6, X Marks the Spot, was great. Yeah. I mean, I laughed out loud. Because there was an invisibility formula that kids got involved in. The villain had created this invisibility formula, and somehow the kids got a hold of it, but it was like a not quite finished version of the formula. So like it all affected the kids differently. Like one kid, it just made their legs disappear. And the other one is just the top half of their body disappeared. And then Alex was just a little translucent, which I thought was hilarious. I mean, he wasn't completely invisible. He was just kind of see-through. It was so funny. I just laughed out loud. I'm like, that's hilarious. Yeah. So the three of them are standing there. There's a pair of legs, there's a torso, and then just Alan Yates kind of see through them. Oh, God, I just thought that was so much fun.
Yeah,
that's a great way to.
That was just a very clever episode.
Yeah. I loved that. Like, what do we do? Oh, we can't make them all disappear because there's nothing there, Yeah. So the characters were still there. They were just half invisible. I thought it was great.
Yeah, that was a good one. Actually, I like the very first one. The Nemo is a no affair, and actually they did it again with the second one. The Green Thumb is not a Goldfinger. They take the villain and they basically just mock like some famous actor. And the first one, Nemo, is clearly a Boris Karloff ripoff. Like his voice is just like identical.
Yeah. And he's tall and the big long face.
Yeah, and kind of thin. And then you get the next time, like the really heavy set, the Green Thumb character is Sidney Greenstreet.
Sure.
So it's just a complete caricature of it. But in Nemo, my favorite part, and it made me laugh because it's so stupid. So the entire band, they're put in these little capsules, and with anchors at the bottom and drop to the bottom of the ocean. Right. And
that was how the villain got rid of them.
Yes, and but they escape because Sebastian the cat finds a fishbowl, dumps it out, puts it on his head, and swims to the bottom of the ocean and
to rescue his friends. That was awesome.
And it's not like they do something to seal it. It's just like he just puts a bowl on his head and he can breathe fine.
Yeah, just had enough air trapped in there to keep his little feline body alive until he got to the bottom. Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah. I mean, every kid has that dream, right? Like, I can put this bucket over my head and go underwater because there's air in there, Yeah, that was funny. Chili Today and Hot Tamale, episode 7. So they dress up Josie as a different supervillain called the Lizard, and they're dealing with the Scorpion. And she dresses up as, I'm the Lizard, and I'm here to help you dominate the world, So they're tricking the villain into believing he's got an ally now, which was a clever plan.
Yeah.
And I laughed out loud, and I had to watch the scene again. They start bartering with the Scorpion over control of the world. Like, we want the whole world. And he's like, no. And Alex rips a picture in half of the world. Well, how about half? No. Quarter? No. A tenth? No. And then Josie finally says, how about just Coney Island? Like they bartered the whole world down to Coney Island. I just thought that was hilarious. Like, well, we're not getting anything. Can we at least get Coney Island?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really good little gags like that.
Yes.
I mean, as much as I'm not huge like the dumb blonde character that Melody is, she has some just hilarious one-liners that I mean, it's just hilarious.
Right.
I really like that. Actually, the other episode, there's 2 other episodes I have, and we might be on the same page on one of them.
Yeah.
I'm sure we are. The episode 14, Spy School spoof.
Yes. Spy spoof. That was my favorite one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and some of the absurdity of it is what I loved about it. So you have the Lasers, the maid guy who's his hair seems to be the inspiration for Hugh Jackman's Wolverine.
Yes.
So he's got like these little points in the back.
It's really weird.
Yeah, it's just goofy.
He almost looked like a Vincent Price type of haircut,
Yeah, it was just a weird looking dude.
Odd.
And I love the fact that he has, so the whole point of that one is that their sheet music they're waiting for it to come in on a courier service. I don't know who's writing their music, even though allegedly they write their own songs.
Yeah.
And then it gets mixed up with this courier gives them these top secret scientific laser.
Yeah, his instructions for building his machine.
Yeah.
His doomsday machine that stops all mechanical things from working.
So the world's worst courier drops off the wrong letter to them. So they get the secret plans. And the Laser's like, oh, like they're trying to get these secret blueprints, and they find out. So he sends like this car with 2 of his henchmen in, and sends them to go to get it to capture the courier.
They're classic henchmen.
Yeah, and they get the courier, and they realize all they have is Josie and the Pussycat sheet music, and so he sends out an APB to all his other henchmen, wherever they are, like beyond the look. I mean, literally, like they're like he's got a.
And I got to go back to how do you become a henchman? I mean, is that a career aspiration? Yeah. How long have you henched?
Yeah, Lackey 102 is really hard.
Well, that's the weed out class. It's either this or you go back to accounting.
But so he sends out this APB, and they cut to another car with 2 other guys, and they're like, "Oh, there they are."
Yeah,
like
we found them.
Like, so he's got like cars of 2 henchmen at a time, just spread everywhere, out around whatever city they're in. Just like, oh yeah, be on the lookout for a band.
Sure. Carrying my plans.
And what they look like, oh, there's a van with instruments on it. And they drive up closer and see that it's Josie and the Pussycats. And I'm like, okay. So he's just got guys just sitting around. Like, what kind of payroll does the Laser have?
He's huge. He's global.
I mean, clearly he's spent a lot on hair product. But I mean, it's just funny. He's got like,
oh my God, that was great.
Yeah, and then they end up getting into his like secret compound, which of course is surrounded by lasers.
Yep, laser fences.
Yeah, and it's just like, some of the absurdity of it is just so amusing.
So they somehow they give him fake plans. Not the real plan, just fake plans to mess with him. Yeah. So he ends up building this machine with the wrong plans. And when he turns the machine on, it works in reverse. So everything around the place that was broken all of a sudden starts working. Mm-hmm. And this was really cool. I don't know if you saw it. So he turns it on and a TV set starts playing. And on the TV is a cameo of Tom and Jerry.
Oh, I didn't see that.
It's a cat chasing a mouse on the TV screen. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. What else would come on the TV but, Tom and Jerry? I just thought it was hilarious. It was a cat chasing a mouse. It wasn't. I inferred that it was Tom and Jerry on TV, which I just thought was so cool. That episode was it was well written. It was funny. The fact that he had henchmen all over the world and they were immediately able, it was like the CIA, like they found him immediately, found these kids with his mail.
Yeah, it was, some of the absurdity of it, but it worked really well. It was just amusing and funny.
Contrary to that, episode 11, All Wong in Hong Kong, it was just a bad episode. That was sea-level effort.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I hated watching it.
And it was offensive.
I mean, the name, All Wong in Hong Kong. I mean...
so you can tell right off the bat where that thing's going.
Yeah. And thankfully this was episode 11. So I'd seen 10 good episodes until this. I'm like,
Yeah.
But then after that, they got better too. But that episode was awful.
Yeah, all the Chinese stereotypes were just awful.
It was ugly.
And that one is a slog to get through. When you have a band that's globetrotting, you're setting yourself up for it, especially in 1970. They're running, and there are portrayals of characters here and there, but none of them are. They're not like the main villain running through it, and they're talking with this horrible
the toy maker and
the bad accents and it
was awful.
The less said about that the better.
The Great Pussycat chase One thing I remember that episode is that the villain's airplane looked like a U-2 spy plane, which I love airplanes. And I'm like, God, that looks like a U-2 spy plane. That's pretty awesome. That the villain's flying a U-2. You know? So there were some really fun episodes, some really creative writing, and one bad episode out of 16. One episode that was just, even without the cultural... Even without the cultural mores, it was still a bad episode.
Yeah, it was just dumb.
Yeah, it was a dumb episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, there were some good episodes in here, for sure.
Yeah, the one absurdity, the one I still can't figure out if I think it's funny or if I think it's stupid. It is probably both. It's the Melody character. Whenever there's danger nearby, her ears start to wiggle.
Yeah, her ears wiggle. Yeah.
And there's sometimes where it's kind of funny, but there's one. I think it's actually the laser episode where they're in a car. And they're like, I think somebody's following us. And Alan's like, well, one way to find out. And he reaches back and he pushes her hair aside. And you see the ear, but it's like clearly like it's on the opposite side, like the side that's away from you. Mm-hmm. So they had to animate like this ear that's basically on like right next to her eye, wiggling back and forth. Yeah. It looks so odd. Because it's just...
Do you remember the scene they were on the hydrofoil boat? And she's like, look, my ears are wiggling. She pulled her hair back and the ears are just going like Dumbo. They're just flapping like butterfly wings. I'm like, how did she not notice that before now?
Well, it's a strong wind.
Yeah. I'm like, are they just flapping
They just
in the
normally
wind?
flap in the wind.
Right.
But yeah, and it's such a weird thing.
It didn't need that.
No.
They all knew they were in trouble.
It's like
she didn't need a spidey sense.
Well, she's a distinct character in and of herself. She doesn't need to have wiggling ears to really make her stand out.
Right. Yeah. That was silly.
Yeah.
So some fun episodes for sure.
Yeah.
What about your good?
My good, well, the music, right off the bat is fantastic. The voice acting I thought was really well done, and we just kind of talked like a lot of the gags are just they land. They're just silly, but
timing was great.
They worked really well, and I love the Valerie character, and I love the Melody character.
Yeah.
Valerie, just because there's this, it's kind of neat to see something like this where you have this character who's just very down to earth and just like kind of holds everybody together. But and she didn't have to be a character. She wasn't a token like we had with D&D where you have Diana. It was just like, well, we need our diversity. There she goes. And,
right.
Yeah, she doesn't do anything, but Valerie's like like I said, the linchpin to this team.
Yeah, she's a main character.
And then Melody was just her silliness and goofiness is just
funny.
Yeah, just makes for some really good laughs throughout the series.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm going with the music. I thought the music was awesome. The voice acting, the writing in these episodes was funny. But overall, the music really, I waited till the end of the episode to hear the song. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool. I just really enjoyed it. For the bad, I just could not get past Alan and Alex being direct ripoffs of Fred and Shaggy. I just couldn't. I couldn't get past it. I mean, I'm watching this like, that's Fred and that's Shaggy. I couldn't get past it. So it bothered me the whole time. Yeah. So I just started ignoring them.
I think by the end of it, I think they differentiated Alan enough that he's kind of his own character. Yeah, yeah. I mean, he had a little bit more, pigeonholed him a little bit more than Fred. Fred did a little bit more like problem solving and things like that.
Alan's more like,
more the muscle.
What do you need me to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But, he'd never stepped forward to take control like Fred would have.
Yeah. But Alexander is Shaggy without the food.
Because the voice is Casey Kasem.
Yeah.
It's the same voice.
He doesn't he changes it only slightly.
Very little.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise it's Shaggy's voice.
Yeah. Shaggy with a little more mod clothing. So,
exactly, yeah. The sunglasses were cool. Yeah. I mean, he had the sunglasses on the whole time. Those were neat.
And an ascot.
Yeah.
So the bad for me was Alexandria. I fought with that character so much. Yeah. They could have done without her, and I don't think. I mean, I guess they're trying to stay true to the comic to a point. Sure, but it was just they could have taken her out and probably it made the show just as well, if not better.
It wouldn't have mattered. Yeah. Actually, I put Alexandria as my ugly, just because she was so mean. She's just blatantly mean and aggressive about it. To these people, and like, why are they letting her hang around? Yeah. Like I said in Dungeons and Dragons, why didn't they just pull him aside and go, look, dude, we're all in trouble here. And the same thing with Alexandria. Like, what are you doing? We're allowing you to come along on our tour.
Yeah.
Shut your yap.
Well, and some of the choices she makes too, like I believe it is the second episode where they're supposed to get on a plane, and she like tries to trick them all into like this plane that takes them over to the Amazon.
Plane, yeah.
And so they just drag her along because she thought it's going to be just her and Alan, and everybody else is going to get sent to the Amazon. Yeah. Which, come on.
She's sabotaging the whole band. She's actively sabotaging.
To go hang out with a guy who does not want to be with her.
No, he has no interest in it whatsoever.
And of course, mayhem ensues because she gets dragged onto the cargo plane too, and they end up dropped in the Amazon. But that was so she was my ugly. But my ugly was, it comes down to the all's long.
Oh yeah, that was awful.
The bad stereotypes. I mean, and the one, I mean, they keep popping up, but they're definitely there. I mean, it's of its time, unfortunately. Sure. But outside of episode 11, they're not horrible. They show up here and there, like, could have gone worse with that. Yeah. Like you expect something worse, and then you don't get it, and then then episode 11 comes in, punches you in the face.
Right. Like, oh, I saw the title of that, I'm like, oh no,
yeah, exactly.
Here we go.
Yeah, before you even started, it's going bad.
I knew immediately because I was scrolling down, like, oh no.
Well, what did you scale of 1 to 10? Where would you put Josie and the Pussycats?
So I really liked it. I thought the voice acting was good. I was impressed by the writing for I mean, they had 20 minutes roughly, and then a 3-minute song. It was formulaic, I'll give you that, but it was good. Mm-hmm. The writing was good and the dialogues were good. I liked it more than I thought I would. Mm-hmm. By the time I watched all of them, looking back, I'm like, I really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. So I was at an 8 with this just because I had fun with it.
Yeah, and my score was an 8, and I said,
oh really?
Well, but I also said that Voodoo would impact my score, so my final score is 9 because it's a whole point.
Oh really?
For that song alone, it's worth a point to me.
I think it's that's fair.
Yeah, I think it's more than good enough to bump that up. So I put it as a 9. So it's I think they did a nice job of kind of looking at the two series that they're trying to mimic and kind of score points off of, and I thought they did a good job.
Right.
And made it unique enough that it stands out on its own.
Yeah. What do you want to do next?
I think we should jump ahead about 11 years.
Okay. So we're in the 80s?
Yep. So with the new Shazam movie coming out, I think we should revisit the Shazam cartoon.
Okay.
From Filmation.
Yeah, I didn't watch that one as a child, so that'll be cool.
I do
catch up on that.
Very faint memories of it. But
do you?
I do remember watching some of them.
Yeah.
So it'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We're both going in completely blind on this one.
Really. Truly on this one, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Right.
And made it unique enough that it stands out on its own.
Yeah. What do you want to do next?
I think we should jump ahead about 11 years.
Okay. So we're in the 80s?
Yep, so with the new Shazam movie coming out, I think we should revisit the Shazam cartoon.
Okay.
From Filmation.
Yeah, I didn't watch that one as a child, so that'll be cool.
I do
catch up on that.
Very faint memories of it. But
do you?
I do remember watching some of them.
Yeah.
So it'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We're both going in completely blind on this one. Really.
Truly on this one, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, I hear, Mom, I think it's time for us to go outside. So that means cartoon time is over. I'm John.
I'm Robert.
And this is Toon Talk.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you want more Toon Talk, you can find us on Twitter @ToonTalkGuys.
Or if you've got questions, comments, or suggestions, you can email us at toontalkguys@gmail.com.